Hoping that I am presenting live in the group. Everything's just coming into action. Great. So if anyone's there, I know a lot of you aren't able to make it today due to work. 4 o'clock works for me, to be honest, at the moment, just because I'm in the office. I have a spare appointment, so I know that it doesn't work for many of you. But if you can't make it, then I will be setting up a unit section for this month and all the live videos, including the one at the end with the nutritional therapist that we've got coming through into the group. It'll all be in there, so you'll be able to catch it there anyway. But if anyone is listening, say hello. Otherwise I shall... I saw number 1 pop up, somebody's there. Otherwise I'll carry on and go through the motions. I'll just give people a chance to join us. For those of you that are new in the group, I've not managed to welcome everybody in recently, but I'm Alex, so I'm a psychotherapist in private practice and I'm the admin of the group. The group was originally set up to help parents facilitate their children's self-esteem, but recently it's changed, so you may have come in on the cusp of that change, but now it is about a safe space for parents and carers to be themselves, to find out how they can be better, whatever that means for them, how they can grow in certain areas that they feel quite limited in, and so that they can understand their children more as well, so that they're able to parent to their children's specific needs. So there's a lot of changes that are happening, and this month is the first month whereby there is, hi Danny, a very set schedule. So it's very different, but I'm excited to be here. There are blogs being released every Monday through the month. There is a live every Tuesday through the month. And then I'm also setting a little task by video as well on a Thursday, which will follow the blog and the video. So it's kind of like keep the momentum going. So today we are talking about the need to nourish ourselves, or self-care, whatever it is that you call it. I know some people have a really strong aversion to the idea of self-care. I personally really like it. It really resonates with me. You'll probably hear me saying self-care quite a lot through this video anyway. But whatever you call it, as parents and carers, I think we are pretty together in our experience of being quite rubbish at it. I pick it up and put it down like a yo-yo. I find when there's stress around in my life that I can lose contact with myself quite easily. So having a good sense of what my symptoms are and what the signs are allow me to connect with it a lot easier. And the more I do that, the easier that gets. So I think that in preparation for Alice, the nutritional therapist coming through at the end of the month, what I want to do is I want to make these lives be accessible beyond just giving you information and telling you what you need to do. That kind of falls under the category of advice for me, and I'm not that keen. I think we can all easily type into Google or any search engine what we need to do, and there's an abundance of information. And what I want, in a way that I want this to make this to be different, is so that you get to understand why the information doesn't translate into behaviour. So when you know what it is that you need to be doing, how come you don't just do it? And also I think that the idea that if we take better care of ourselves, that we need more time in the day, that we need to do the self-care away from our children or our families and our duties. And I don't think it's necessarily the case. I think that what our minds sometimes go to is the bigger self-care tasks that take more time and more effort and can leave us feeling quite overwhelmed at just the thought of navigating that, like how we would do it. So I want to bring it back. So instead of looking at it on the macro level, I want to kind of look at the little things that we can do to make some small changes, and as the small changes become more familiar and have become integrated, is what I would term part of ourselves and part of our day-to-day functioning, then we can start to roll that out to the bigger things that our minds may more automatically go to. So the intentions of today then, what I want us to explore is our nervous system, and how, when we are racing around, spinning all those plates, juggling all those balls, the impact that that has on our nervous system, and how our body interprets and uses stress. So, I'm going to use myself in this video as well. I thought I'll put that out there because it's easy for me to go to. So when I use examples of my own life, it isn't about, I'm not saying that what I do is right. What I'm saying is what I do works for me. And if it triggers some thinking for you, then that's great. Share them, take it away, sit on it for a while and see how it resonates. But I'm a working mum, and when I had my first child, so when I had Rose, I went back to working full-time, employed, self-employed, and soon realised that it wasn't working for me, that I just didn't have the resources for it. And so I had to do a lot of work about accepting what that meant for me with regards to how I was functioning and how I believed I was supposed to function, what parenting was meant to be like in my head before I became a parent. And then I had to navigate the things that I had to do, so hand my notice in, and other things that I needed to do for my well-being. And when we think then about how we function day to day, working mum, children, house to clean, house to keep functioning, partner to consider, pets to consider, other things like making sure your car's got MOT. I mean, if I ain't got my diary open every day, that stuff just easily goes out the window, and that's a sign of being overwhelmed and having too many plates to spin. And what that does then is it has an impact on our nervous system. And our nervous system affects all parts of our body. There is a difference between day-to-day stress and stress that our body experiences out of our awareness. The day-to-day stress is the times when you've got your head in your hands and you know that you're having a tough day, or you're trying to problem solve your way out of something. That's day-to-day stress that a lot of us can relate to. But what happens when we don't find a resolve for our problems, or when we've experienced some emotional discomfort or emotional trauma, physical trauma, whatever it is, if there's something left over, what that can do is reside in our nervous system. And the cortisol then that is released during the day-to-day stress, those times when we're able to recognise that we're stressed, continues to be released in the body. And the nervous system is connected with all areas of our self. So that cortisol then has an impact on all areas of our self. It affects our brain functioning, it impacts our digestive system, it impacts our blood pressure, it affects our organs and our appetite. So our appetite with food, our appetite with sex, whatever appetites that we have, is that the levels of cortisol in our system are affected. And so then some of the symptoms on our body is that we are feeling that we're quite lethargic. We may sleep well, but we may still feel tired. We may have sleep disturbances. We may have digestive issues such as IBS or stomach ulcers and what's the word? I know that people that sometimes have Crohn's are triggered with stress, so they need to be really mindful of the levels of cortisol in their system. You can have weight issues. Some people struggle to put weight on when they're stressed, and some people struggle to lose weight when they're stressed. And then there's things like regular illnesses or time that it takes to recover from illnesses. I'm somebody that has cold sores, so when my immune system is taking a hit or when I'm run down, that's when my cold sores generally appear. So we can be stressed even though we aren't recognising that we're stressed. And I often find that when we accept that we have to deal with a lot in our lives, that the level of stress that invites into our body flies under the radar, because it's normal, it's usual, it's something that we're used to encountering. And I also think that it's absorbed by the body and it goes under the radar because that way it allows us to keep functioning. But the thought that it resides in the body is a concern, because what happens is there's a biochemical reaction to any emotion that our body receives. So if you think of a unit of emotion, that our body, in order to receive that, so think of like receptors, is that it needs specific receptors to be able to take joy, gratitude, stress, anger, fear, excitement. Any emotion needs a receptor to be able to, for your body to be able to translate and respond appropriately. And what happens when we consistently experience a type of emotion? So there's higher levels, there's not one unit of emotion. So let's use stress and keep with the theme. There's lots of units of stress, which then means that our body needs to adapt and develop lots of receptors to be able to accept and translate and use it to inform and for our body to do and respond to that stress hormone, so to the cortisol. And then over time what happens is that our bodies, if we are over familiar with stress, is that we have a very high level or high content of receptors for that hormone, for that experience and for that emotion. And what our body over time then starts to do is that it starts to anticipate it, because there's a natural, when we talk about water will always find an easiest route, and that if your body walks the walk of stress a lot, it's a very familiar and easy pathway for your body to access, and your body will start to anticipate and look for and even take from situations stress, because becomes its natural pathway, its natural way of perceiving the world. So you can see that, when we talk about being parents and carers and having all these plates to juggle, and I know that the reality is nobody else sometimes is going to juggle those plates, spin those plates and juggle those balls for us if we don't do it. But what I'm saying is, I'm not asking you to do more. It's about calming the experience that you have and using your nervous system and the way that we can influence our nervous system to get the ball rolling with that. Our cells replenish, like rejuvenate every 2 months, and that's a good thing. So when we talk about the brain and the plasticity, like, we can change our brain processing, and we can also influence our nervous system in the same way. And that's often the 2 month cycle is often why it takes a while to, when we have a behavioural change, that it takes a while for it to integrate and become more fluid and feel more natural. So we can change it. And we need to slow the process down, and we need to acknowledge that if you can relate to some of the symptoms that I listed, the tiredness, the fatigue, the disturbed sleep, recurring illnesses, things like that, that the likelihood is that you've got some emotional unresolved stress or challenges that reside in your body. And I'd like you to take that seriously, if I'm honest. I think that's the purpose of this live, really, is that, self-care is often linked to the bubble baths, painting your nails, listening to whale music, but it isn't. It's about meeting your needs more than your physical needs and your emotional needs, but your biological needs as well. The needs that your senses have when you're feeling overwhelmed, sensory overload. Sometimes I can walk in the house and everybody's so excited. I say everybody, I mean the children, to see me, and the noise just kind of escalates. And I'm really aware of the one part of me that wants to embrace and be part of it, but the other part of me after work that really needs my senses I need to be able to unplug them. So yeah, I really want you to take this seriously. And I think that when we look outside of ourselves then, and we look at the impact of our overactive nervous system can have on our behaviour and our relationships with our loved ones, that we often feel irritated and overwhelmed, less patience. We can often find ourselves withdrawing and avoiding. So that's from people physically, or distracting ourselves with things like social media, and and being involved in other people's lives as a distraction and a removal from our own. We can have quite harmful, critical thought processes about not being good enough. They're easier to seep in when we're not. I talk about cold sores, that mine often surface when I'm depleted, when my resources are depleted and my immune system's taken a bit of a hit. Those negative cycles are often creep in with a lot more ease when we're under stress and we're really not taking care of ourselves. So we can get stuck in those negative thought processes about us not being good enough. Not being good enough at our job, not being good enough as a parent, not being good enough as a partner. And then before we know it, we're kind of knee deep in that thought process, and it can take us quite a while to get out of it. And on top of that, what it's doing is injecting more negativity, more stress, more helplessness. And remember that it's not just stress that our body reacts negatively to, but the helplessness, the distress. There's receptors for all of these, and when we don't take care of ourselves, we leave ourselves open to these negative cycles, and then our body keeps developing more neurons, and it keeps on receptors, and it keeps anticipating that experience, and so we look for it and we notice it more. And that's why, on the reverse to that, then people say that we need to practice gratitude so that we get better at it. And in the same sense, the more you practice gratitude, the more receptors that you have for gratitude, the more connected your body is, the more it looks for it, and the more it's able to identify it and pick it out for you to take and reinforce that process with. We can feel tension in our bodies. A big thing for me, with regards to an internal experience, brain fog is something that is a sign for me that I'm starting to get overwhelmed. And on a physical sense as well is tension, and I often feel mine in my jaw and my neck. And I find that when I get home and I'll go upstairs and feel quite peaceful actually as I'm feeding my baby, but I'll also roll my neck and be really mindful of the fact that I've got a lot of tension in there, that the day's been a lot of immersion in my day working as a psychotherapist. I go home and I'm aware of, that how my partner's day been, or the time that he's had with the children and the children and their needs, and I'm aware that it's all in my body and that I need to move it. Sometimes parents talk about their irritability often leads to shouting, and so the way, which is a defence really, kind of shouting is a way, it kind of, people's responses to that means that they often back off or they do what we need them to do. So it's a defence and it's a way for us to get our needs met, but it's not something that necessarily feels good in relation to our loved ones. So again, if you're relating to some of these behavioural symptoms that I'm saying, that's another reason why I really want you to take stock of the invite to slow down and be aware that you can have more control over your nervous system, and that it comes from under the guise of nourishing or self-care. We can start to feel disconnected from, as we start to withdraw, we can feel disconnected from our loved ones. We can feel like we're not really understood. We can feel quite missed and unimportant. But that often what our internal experience is what gets projected as well. So when we're feeling like we're not important and that we're getting missed, look inwards first and see if you're missing yourself and you're not valuing yourself. I felt a sense of immersion rise when I said that, which is really interesting. I know that in the past that's been something that I've really struggled to do. And at times, I say again, sometimes I drop the ball, and these signs and symptoms are what I'm able to relate to more and more the more familiar that I get with them. And another big thing in a behavioural sense is that we can start to miss or misread our children's needs and their cues. That we feel that our own needs and our own level of discomfort is so layered that our children's needs or the needs of our partners really struggle to penetrate and get through, or those layers of our own challenges start to fog over and make it more difficult to see what's going on for our children. So sometimes we miss what it is that they need, and sometimes when we try and meet their needs but we get it wrong, that can be quite reinforcing of our failure or our guilt. So when I say you really need to do this, it's not about just being kind to yourself. It's about taking care of your health. It's about giving your relationships the best opportunity, because when you are the best version of yourself, when you're on top form, then your relationships get the benefit of that. So what can we do then in our tight schedule when sometimes we're already feeling like we're on our knees? First and foremost, I think it's about accepting where you are, accepting that you could do with some of this. You could do with stripping it back a little bit, noticing yourself more, noticing how your body responds to not being taken care of and not valued, and seeing how it translates into your relationship. So how it starts to contaminate your relationships. Because let's be fair, contaminate's not, it doesn't come with nice images for me, but when we aren't taking care of ourselves, generally how it translates into our behaviour and our relationships generally doesn't feel nice. We find ourselves saying sorry or wishing we hadn't done something. I'm not asking you to do more. What I want you to start with is about calming and slowing down what already exists. I want you to find time for breathing. And I don't mean time without anything else, kind of take yourself off and do some breathing, but when you're driving in the car, when you're waiting for somebody to pick up the phone, when you're cooking tea, when you're putting the washing away. The times when sometimes you can find yourself getting into other negative thought processes, or you may be planning and worrying about the things that you've got to do and the lists. Like, those things are going to happen anyway, and the negative thinking will start to decrease the more that you turn your attention inwards and start to pay attention to your nervous system. So if you can just find space within those tasks to breathe differently, that is a great way to influence your nervous system. And a way that you can do that is that the breath out is related to activation of the parasympathetic nervous system, and that's the part of the nervous system that's associated with feeling calm and relaxed. And the wonderful thing about our body is that you can't be calm and relaxed and stressed at the same time. So when you induce, when you kind of make your body through breath relax, then you are interrupting the levels of cortisol in your body. You are interrupting the levels of cortisol then that your body is having to receive, and influencing the levels that it will become over time used to receiving, but also increasing calmness in your body so that your receptors will start to increase for that experience. So if your out breath is what's going to do the good, what I want you to do when you do the breathing exercises is make your out breath twice as long as your in breath. So if you breathe in for 3, I want you to breathe out for 6. So that might sound or look something like this. So in, out, and repeat. And because there's no holding of the breath as such, you can do that over a period of time. People that do yoga will be familiar with the deeper breathing into your tummy, and like that, the big in and the long out, it is about calming your nervous system. And another way that you can do this is by stretching your body. And again, a yoga practice takes time. It means that these jeans, for example, that I'm sat in today, won't lend their hand at doing any yoga poses. But if you're doing it whilst you're doing your other things as well. So I'm going to speak about myself again. I do like yoga, and I don't always have time for it or space in my house because there's children's toys everywhere. But one thing that I do enjoy doing is folding forwards, so in effect touching my toes. And by stretching your body, it does in essence take more energy, but it provides your body with energy, and the stretch makes your body function more effectively, and so in the long run takes less energy for your body to function. Kind of standing with your arm on a door frame and stretching and pulling back so that your sockets are stretched. The neck rolls, the forward folding. I like to do that mainly because I just like to see how many times I do it before I can touch my toes. Standing with your legs open and reaching and touching one toe and reaching and touching the other. Like, they don't all have to be done together. It can be get out of bed, do a stretch, go downstairs, sit down with your coffee, be rolling your neck while you're telling one child to stop dragging the other one across the living room, but you're rolling your neck. And it's about, we need to start finding a balance. It's kind of really, all or nothing thinking that can sometimes come with self-care, is that you do need to take ourselves off. And I asked on the page today, self-care, is it taking time away from our children and time away from meeting our children's needs? And quite often the experience is that, yes, that feels true. But is it? So we really need to confront the way that we frame this. Another thing that I want to invite you to think about before we finish is the idea of using boundaries. And what I mean by that is space between you and something else. And referring back to what I said is, I'm not necessarily asking you to do more, find more time to fit more in. It's about calming down what's already going on. So I'm thinking time spent on your phone. I know it's a challenge, and it can be, let's remember that when our body experiences something over a period of time and consistently, it becomes very fluid and it becomes automatic. Picking up your mobile phone, just before I'm waiting for the clock to count down for the live, and I'm watching my niece on Snapchat. It's so easy to pick up, but it's about, if it feels as though it gives you time away from yourself, is that where you can pull it back? Are you aware that you're sat and you're replying to people and you're kind of rushing? Can you change that? I will ring people if I have the headspace for it. I ring people on my way home. So I'll ring my nana, I'll ring my friend, and sometimes I sit in silence, and sometimes what I need is some music to sing to, because that's what gives me my energy for arriving home to the chaos. But sometimes if they don't answer, they'll ring me back or they'll text me back, and I don't ring back. Once I'm at home, I don't ring back, and I don't reply to messages, rarely reply to messages until the morning, because that's just my time to reconnect. Sometimes I'm doing nothing other than vegging in front of the TV. Sometimes I'm really enjoying my meal. Sometimes I'm enjoying cooking it. Sometimes I haven't got the space because my family has needs that are heightened. I have a baby, so maybe not going to sleep. Daughter not wanting to go to bed when we've just walked through the door, or she's just not ready for bed yet. And so there's lots of reasons. It's not always about me, but it's about calming the chaos and not feeling like I have to do all those things and respond to my phone as well. And I often, and mainly before lockdown, if I'm honest, look at my diary and think about how often I'm out the house. Like, I'm out the house for work. I was out the house to do my shopping. I was out the house to, kind of go to appointments. And sometimes that's not out the house just for a day. It's a bit of each day. And it can feel chaotic, and it can feel like I'm not in and doing the things that I need to do, and then the list of the things inside my house gets longer. So sometimes I just think, I'm not going to go out on Thursday. If I do, it's just going to be a walk, and it's going to be for me, but it's not going to be going out and meeting people. I'm not going to make plans that day. In fact, my plan is to do nothing. And I think that if you create a boundary like that, and you've decided upon it, over time you're able to pick that up as a strategy to be able to calm and create more space. Using a diary, I find that really helpful. Sometimes colour coding, kind of work is something, house chores are one thing, and it allows me to see a balance, like, there's like house stuff